If you see this tree, run fast and yell for help. Plants and trees surround you pretty much wherever you go. In fact, there are over 3 trillion trees on our planet, way more than scientists thought just a decade ago. And that's great news, since trees and other plants clean our air, help prevent water pollution and soil erosion, and provide us with oxygen and cooling shade on a hot day. Some of them even supply people with food. So basically, trees are awesome. Well, except for the ones that kill. After watching this video, you'll be much more cautious around certain tree species and probably won't even dare to come near them. Be ready for some shocking and scary information. You'll never forget this one tree that can literally rain acid on you. The sandbox tree. Thank goodness this tree is really easy to recognize so that you'll know to stay far away from it. It can reach heights of 130 feet. Its trunk is covered with cone-shaped spikes, and its fruit looks like mini pumpkins. Every part of this tree is dangerous to people. If you get its sap in your eyes, blindness can become a frighteningly real possibility. If you accidentally eat the fruit, your body will have an almost instant reaction with cramps, vomiting, and diarrhea. And if all that isn't enough to keep you at a distance, when the fruit matures, it becomes dark brown and explodes, shooting seeds a whopping 150 miles per hour in all directions. You can imagine what a serious injury that could cause if you ever get in the way of these organic bullets. The cherry tree and its relatives. This might come as a surprise, but there's no mistake here. Cherry trees can be extremely dangerous, especially for small children and dogs. The cherry tree's relatives include peach, plum, apricot, choke cherry, and other trees of this kind. All of them release particular chemicals that later metabolize into cyanide. If we talk about cherry trees in particular, you can find these chemicals throughout the plant, especially in high concentrations on fallen and wilted leaves. If a child or dog eats just 1 or 2 of this tree's leaves, they'll suffer from a horrible stomachache. And if they eat more than that, they'll most likely end up with cyanide poisoning. So if you notice symptoms like weak pulse, seizures, dark urine and gums, and difficulties breathing, call for help immediately. Cyanide poisoning can easily and quickly become fatal. The Ohio Buckeye. This is one more tree we bet you never suspected of presenting any sort of danger. But in fact, it's quite a threat. All parts of the Ohio buckeye tree contain saponins, which are chemicals that depress the central nervous system. Little kids, as well as pets, love playing with the brown, shiny buckeye nuts that fall onto the ground. Just make sure that your little ones don't put them in their mouths. If children or dogs eat or chew on buckeyes, they'll most likely suffer from vomiting and diarrhea. Pets may have trouble breathing or start to stagger and shake. If you have an Ohio buckeye tree near your house, your best and safest bet is to pick up all the nuts and twigs and keep them out of your kids' and pets' reach. The apple and crabapple tree. Some more shocking news. Good old trusty apple trees aren't so trusty after all. They can be poisonous to different mammals, such as cats, dogs, and people. The thing is that just like the cherry tree, the leaves, stems, and seeds of this tree contain that very same chemical that's metabolized into cyanide during digestion. Again, fallen leaves are most dangerous than those still attached to the branches. But the biggest amount of the chemical is in the apple seeds themselves. Of course, you're unlikely to swallow 200 seeds or munch on 20 apple cores, which is the fatal dosage for people. But if pets and other animals eat too many apples, it can easily kill them. The Cibera odolum. This tree goes by another name, the suicide tree. It's clear from the nickname that this tree can take a life. It grows in South Asia and India, where some desperate people are willing to end their lives just by eating the extremely toxic fruit of this tree. When mature, these fruits look like miniature mangoes. You shouldn't ever eat them or touch the tree. Some of the tree's components are used to make deodorants and pesticides, but in its pure form, the Cibera odolum can be deadly. The Manchineel tree. If you travel to the Caribbean, the tropical parts of North America, or the northern parts of South America, you may notice trees marked with red crosses, warning signs, or a red ring painted on them. Do not do what radiologist Nicola Strickland did and never ever approach this tree. Dr. Strickland and her friend were on vacation on the tropical Caribbean island of Tobago when they found some sweet-smelling green fruit resembling crab apples on the beach. Without even a moment's hesitation, they bit into the tempting fruit. After just a couple of seconds, the initial sweetness turned into a terrible burning sensation in their mouths. Terrifyingly, not only did the fruit taste awful, it also made their throats swell up to such a point that they couldn't swallow and could hardly breathe. The thing is that the unfortunate vacationers stumbled across the most dangerous tree in the world, also known as the Tree of Death. It has such a notorious reputation that it was even put in the Guinness Book of World Records in 2011. As strange as it might sound, the Manchineel belongs to the diverse Euphorbia genus, which is the same family as the beautiful, yet also slightly toxic, Christmas poinsettia. And what exactly is so dangerous about the Manchineel Tree of Death? Well, everything in short. Highly toxic milky sap oozes out of the tree's leaves, bark, and fruit. It contains all kinds of toxins, but the most lethal is formol. Due to the fact that this organic compound is water-soluble, you won't want to seek shelter from the rain under a Manchineel tree. Raindrops will mix with the sap and really harm your skin, causing severe burns, blistering, and skin irritation. If you come across this tree, don't touch its bark either. As we've already mentioned, it's also covered in poisonous sap, and even if it comes into contact with your skin, it can cause blindness. Do not burn Manchineel wood, even if you have nothing else at hand to start a fire. The smoke from this fire will definitely lead to eye inflammation and even temporary blindness. But the most dangerous thing you can do is eat poison guava. That's the nickname of the Manchineel tree's fruit. In a shocking majority of cases, this careless action turns out fatal because terrible diarrhea and severe vomiting dehydrate the body to such an extent that there's no way to reverse the damage. What's more, even if you haven't swallowed the fruit but just bitten into it, its juice will lead to painful boils that will cover your throat and the insides of your mouth. Luckily, Nicola Strickland and her friend survived this near-death experience since they didn't have time to eat much of the poison apple. But when they told the locals what had happened to them, Nicola noticed the look of utter horror in their faces. The tourists were extremely lucky that after 8 hours of intense pain, the swelling went away. And if you're sitting there wondering, why don't the locals just cut all the trees down? Well, that's a reasonable question, but it's more complicated than that. Manchineel trees play an extremely important role in the ecosystem. For example, since they grow in dense thickets, they protect Central American beaches from erosion and serve as windbreakers.
If you see this plant, do not touch it. What would we do without plants? They produce the oxygen we breathe. They're a healthy source of food for us to eat, and they're just downright beautiful to look at. But not all plants grow to make this world a better place. Some of them can kill. So, if you ever see any of the plants from this video, whether it's during a road trip or a hike, or even in somebody's garden, make sure to stay as far away from them as possible. Your curiosity could cost you your health, or in the worst case scenario, your life. Ooh, that's serious. Number 1. Dieffenbachia, also known as dumb cane or leopard lily. Dieffenbachia is a tropical plant native to South and Central America. But if you think it's just some extremely rare exotic plant that's hard to stumble across, you'd be wrong. And that's because the dumb cane is a common houseplant. Lots of people get this plant because it's really easy to take care of. It's low maintenance, yet rewards you for the little work you put into it with large, beautiful leaves. It's no secret that dumb cane is a toxic plant, and it's got a bad rep for that reason. But you shouldn't be so quick to believe all the crazy stories online of this thing killing anyone that crosses it. In most cases, Dieffenbachia isn't deadly for people. However, that doesn't mean you shouldn't be cautious around it. In all parts of the plant, there are tiny needle-shaped crystals of calcium oxalate called raphides. Their main purpose is to protect the plant from herbivores. You know, plant eaters. But that's not all. According to biologists, dumb cane contains other defensive toxins besides calcium oxalate. So, what danger can this plant possibly pose to people? Did we get enough P's in that last sentence? Let's imagine you decide to chew on one of its leaves. In this case, you'll experience profuse salivation and a strong burning sensation in your mouth. Next, your lips, tongue, and throat will swell up. This swelling can result in difficulties breathing, swallowing, and talking. When ingested, Dieffenbachia leaves have been known to cause vomiting, as well as nausea, diarrhea, a hoarse voice, and tongue blistering. Oh, that was bad. Well, you should also avoid touching the leaves. You may get some of its juice on your hands, and this can cause a skin irritation. And if you forget that you've just touched a toxic plant and you rub your eyes, be prepared for pain and burning in your eyes. But what's even worse, the toxins can damage your cornea, the outer layer of the eye. The effects of Dieffenbachia poisoning are unpleasant, but thankfully they're usually not too serious. You may suffer from intense pain and discomfort in your mouth for a few days, but after that, it'll go away on its own. Unfortunately, dumb cane poisoning has resulted in some deaths, but such cases have been extremely rare. Still, it's crucial to know what to do if somebody, like a child, tasted a leaf or two of this pretty plant. First of all, wash out their mouth with a cold, damp cloth and give their hands a thorough scrub. If they've gotten the plant's juice in their eyes, rinse them out too. In case of ingestion, they also need to drink some milk. But if they can't swallow, don't give them anything orally. Keep a close eye on their condition, and if it gets worse, call emergency services immediately. Number 2. Castor bean plant. People use the castor bean plant for tons of medicinal purposes. For example, castor oil has been used for centuries as a natural remedy for constipation, thanks to its laxative properties. Castor seeds, or beans, without their hull, have been used to treat syphilis, leprosy, and constipation as well. It's even known to have been used as a form of birth control. At the same time, the castor bean plant is much more dangerous than Dieffenbachia. Well, not the plant itself, but the hull of its beans. It contains a deadly poison called ricin. This substance is one of the most toxic things known to humankind. That's why seeds of the castor bean plant are extremely dangerous to insects, animals, and people. If a person swallows even one bean in its outer coating, they're already in danger. Symptoms of ricin poisoning include nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, and abdominal pain. These signs appear within a couple of hours after ingesting the seed. Vomiting and often bloody diarrhea don't stop for several days, leading to a drop in urine production and blood pressure. Because of all that, an affected person is at risk for dehydration, shock, liver and kidney failure, pancreatic damage, and ultimately death. Castor plant seeds are especially dangerous for children. This is not stuff to play around with. Captain Obvious. If a victim doesn't die within 3 to 5 days, they'll most likely recover. Plus, if an intact seed is swallowed and not chewed, chances are it'll just pass through your digestive tract without causing any harm. But if the hull of the seed is broken, the ricin can escape and poison the body. By the way, even seemingly harmless and really useful castor oil can become toxic if you keep it in your mouth for too long or if you consume it in large amounts. Number 3. White snakeroot. While snakeroot grows mainly in the US and Canada, it's quite a tall plant, reaching about 3 to 5 feet in height. The plant itself looks very pretty and innocent. In the summer and fall, it's covered with little white flowers that grow in beautiful clusters. It really is lovely, and highly poisonous both for people and animals. White snakeroot contains trematol, a toxic alcohol. Cattle that graze in places where this plant is in abundance are at risk of suffering from weakness, constipation, muscular tremors, and eventually death. But what's even worse, the trematol toxin can cause poisoning in people through both direct consumption and indirect contamination. For example, if you drink the milk or eat the meat of a poisoned cow, you can get milk sickness. This medical condition is characterized by weakness, loss of appetite, nausea, abdominal discomfort, vomiting, and constipation. If the poisoning gets too severe, a person may have convulsions and fall into a coma that eventually leads to death. In fact, milk sickness was the cause of thousands of fatalities among American Midwest settlers in the early 19th century. Number 4. Tobacco plant. Most people nowadays are well aware of the dangers of products made with tobacco, like cigarettes or snuff. But not many know that the plant itself also harms the farmers who cultivate it. The green leaves of the tobacco plant contain nicotine, which can act as a poison. And it's not like you have to burn the plant for it to poison you. It can get absorbed through the skin, especially in wet conditions, like when it rains or a worker is covered in sweat. As a result, severe nicotine poisoning, also known as green tobacco sickness, can develop. Symptoms of nicotine poisoning include dizziness, nausea, headaches, weakness, and vomiting. In most cases, workers on tobacco plantations don't have any protection, and the conditions they work in are perfect for the development of green tobacco sickness. In fact, the average plantation worker comes in contact with the same amount of nicotine you'd find in 50 cigarettes. After harvesting season is over, the blood of one worker contains as much nicotine as that of a chain smoker. It weakens their immune system immensely, paving the way for all kinds of diseases like cancer. So why are we still harvesting this plant anyways? Beats me. As a bonus, I'd like to introduce you to Audrey 2, the meat-eating plant from Little Shop of Horrors. But I can't, because she's not real. And besides, the other plants featured would be jealous.
In Florida and in some parts of the Caribbean coast, you can find an unusual tree. Externally, it doesn't look special at all. A gray trunk, green leaves, and fruit similar to small apples. What you must remember is never to pluck these apples and never stand next to the tree, especially if it's raining. This is the manchineel tree, which is considered the most dangerous in the world. Its trunk, bark, branches, and fruit contain poisonous juice. One drop of this corrosive acidic liquid can harm your skin. A lot. The tree can secrete this juice, and if you accidentally touch it, you risk burning your hand. When it rains, water droplets fall on the tree and mix with the poison. Water can also bounce off the bark and get on your skin. That's why you shouldn't stand nearby either. There are almost no other shrubs or mushrooms growing around. Animals avoid these trees, and people don't chop them and don't pluck the fruit. You can't make a bonfire from their branches. Burning wood emits poisonous smoke that can damage your eyes. Locals know this tree well, but tourists and travelers might accidentally get harmed. That's why most manchineel trees are marked with paint or have a warning sign. To see the next amazing tree, we need to visit the wettest place on Earth. Welcome to the village of Mawsynram in India. The Bay of Bengal isn't that far away, and all the moisture that condenses there moves toward the village. Because of this, the village literally lives in a huge wet cloud. Downpours rarely stop here. Interestingly, people have adapted to life in such a place. They walk and work under special homemade umbrellas made of reeds. But the coolest thing is bridges. They're built so that people can move around the village. Because of the endless rains, it's impossible to construct ordinary bridges and roads here. Building materials simply don't have time to solidify. Water erodes them and turns them into porridge. Luckily, there's very rich vegetation in that area. For example, Indian rubber trees. Their strong roots grow not underground, but on the surface. With the help of special frames and fasteners, people have learned to control how these roots grow. Let's say a tree is next to a small pit. You need to make a bridge from one end of this pit to the other. You direct the growing tree roots in the needed direction. Over time, the roots penetrate the ground and strengthen under endless downpours. It takes about 15 years to create one bridge. One of the most colorful trees in the world grows in the warm rainforests of Southeast Asia. Unlike other trees with colorful leaves, this one has a colorful, bright trunk. From a distance, it seems as if someone has spilled different paints on the tree. The colors shimmer like drops of gasoline on asphalt. The pattern is so beautiful and bright that it's difficult to believe that nature did this. The tree is called the rainbow eucalyptus. The colors on its trunk are constantly changing, depending on the time of year. At first, there are more bright green shades. Then they're replaced with red, orange, and purple. The last color is brown, and then this colorful cycle repeats. The next tree grows in the US. To find it, you'll need to drive along Vashon Highway. The road is surrounded by dense forest. Keep going until you see a bus stop. Then it's time to make your way through the thicket. Bushes, dirt, branches, birdsong, and that's it! You notice quite an ordinary tree. There are hundreds of similar trees around you, but look up and you'll see why this one is so unique. A rusty red bicycle is stuck inside the trunk. It looks as if it's grown into the tree, literally. One wheel and a handlebar are still visible, while everything else is swallowed by the tree. Now the bike looks like part of the forest. The tree has been growing this way for more than 50 years. It all started in 1954. One boy got a bicycle, but he was not very happy about the gift because of its thin tires and uncomfortable handlebars. One day, the boy forgot the bike in the forest when he was playing there with his friends. He just left it leaning against a young tree and went home. The tree continued to grow, and sometime later, the bike became a part of it. The largest trees in the world are redwoods, and one of them, a giant sequoia, is the largest of them all. It grows in California's Sequoia National Park. The tree is called General Sherman, and it's more than 2,000 years old. The volume of this tree is 52,500 cubic feet, which is about half the size of an Olympic swimming pool. A house with several bedrooms, bathrooms, and a spacious living room would easily fit inside the tree. Despite its age, General Sherman is far from the oldest tree. In the park, there are redwoods that are more than 3,000 years old. The tallest tree in the world grows in California, too. It also belongs to the sequoia family. It's called Hyperion, and its height reaches 380 feet. That's 1/3 of the Eiffel Tower's height. The oldest tree in the world is the Great Basin bristlecone pine. It's almost 5,000 years old. It was already growing during the times of ancient Egypt and ancient Greece. But not many people have seen this tree. It might be one of the reasons why it's survived to this day. The tree grows in harsh conditions. It's been hit by strong cold winds for thousands of years, but this has only made its wood more durable. Also, because of bad weather conditions, the tree has been growing very slowly, which also contributed to its longevity. Thanks to the slow growth and dense wood, now the pine isn't afraid of insects, fungi, rotting, or erosion. And the lack of vegetation around the bristlecone pine makes it protected from forest fires. Its exact location is kept secret from the public, so that no one can harm the tree. By the way, trees appeared on our planet about 385 million years ago. Some of them are still growing in colonies that clone themselves. It means that in place of an old tree, a new one appears, and it has a similar genetic structure. Nowadays, there are trees whose family lines began in the times of dinosaurs. These trees look like they've been ripped up out of the ground, turned upside down, and planted again. Baobabs are some of the most beautiful trees in the central part of southern Africa. Their branches grow in such an unusual way because they're too thin for the wide girth of the tree. These trees' trunks resemble sponges. They expand and absorb moisture during the rainy season. Elephants drink this moisture during a drought. They tear off parts of the tree to quench their thirst. At night, flowers bloom on baobabs. They smell like sour milk and attract bats. This tree looks like a bottle. No wonder it's called the bottle tree. It grows in Namibia and attracts many tourists. But don't get too close to the tree because it's one of the most dangerous on Earth. Milky juice flows inside the trunk. It's highly toxic to the human body. But on the bright side, the trees have beautiful pink-white leaves with a red core. There's a tree growing in Western Australia that was once used as a prison. A cell for criminals existed inside the Boab prison tree for a long time. People were usually kept there temporarily, just for one night. After that, they were taken to their final destination. The prison was built more than 1,500 years ago and has been perfectly preserved to this day. Tourists visiting this place can sneak a peek inside. One of the most amazing trees in the world is called the Tree of Life. It grows in Bahrain's desert. The tree has been standing on top of this sandy hill for more than 400 years, surrounded by miles of sand. It's extremely hot here, and there's no moisture. But despite this, the tree has green leaves and continues to grow. So far, scientists haven't figured out yet how the tree gets moisture and nutrients. There are only places with oil deposits around. Locals think the tree is sacred. After all, it demonstrates the magic of life and the power of nature. Some scientists are sure that it's all about the roots. They go so deep that they can reach underground sources of water. The king cobra, black widow, giant hornet, scorpion, and the horsefly. They can all bite, sting, and inject venom into your body. It usually hurts. You experience burning sensations. Your body might react unpredictably. But if you hurry, doctors will help you. The bite site will hurt for a few days, but then you'll forget about it. But what if you get a sting that you can never forget, caused by a plant that looks absolutely unremarkable? You may not even notice touching it, but your body will react immediately. Just being near this plant can cause choking and coughing. Your eyes will start watering. But if you accidentally touch it, well, the pain will last for several days, weeks, months, or several years. Even after a long time, this unpleasant feeling can return at unexpected moments. You'll remember coming across this plant for the rest of your life, that's for sure. And this is not a cactus with sharp needles I'm talking about. Neither is it poison ivy. At first glance, this is an ordinary green bush with broad leaves. The good news is that this plant only grows in particular areas in Australia. It's called the Gympie Gympie. Gold miners discovered it in 1860 near the town of Gympie, and most likely it was an unpleasant find. Before you go to the forest to search for this plant, you need to put on a protective mask, and you'd better opt for a gas mask or respirator. thick clothes, and sturdy boots. Tuck your pant legs inside your boots, wear protective gloves, and you're all set. You don't have to go far into the wild. This plant grows on the edge of the forest, next to streams. You pass by some trees and come closer to the water. Here, in a dense thicket, you notice this dangerous bush. It can grow up to 10 feet tall, and its dark green heart-shaped leaves with jagged edges can grow up to 1.5 feet wide. This plant can easily be confused with nettle or burdock. The only thing that can help identify Gimpy Gimpy is a thin layer of fluff covering its leaves. It's like it's encouraging you to stroke it. But don't fall into this trap. This is not fluff. It's tiny toxic hairs. They're not only on the leaves, but also fly around the plant. If you remove your gas mask, you'll feel as if ground pepper has got into your nose. You'll have an uncontrollable sneezing fit. Your nose will itch. It'll become difficult to breathe. Your tongue will swell. Your eyes will feel as if they're on fire. And if you stay there for some time, this plant will seriously damage your health. For many years, the Gimpy Gimpy caused huge problems to loggers and hunters. Even when they knew about its existence, they often accidentally touched it while working. This was enough to make people sick for several weeks. There were cases where sting sites hurt for decades. One man said he felt pain for 2 years after touching the plant. He experienced extremely unpleasant sensations every time he took a cold shower. People compare this feeling to the sting of 30 wasps simultaneously. And the worst thing is that doctors can hardly help in this situation. Even an old dried leaf lying on the ground presents a serious danger. You can drop your phone or glove, try to pick it up, and accidentally touch the Gimpy Gimpy leaf. To study it, you need to use a pair of tweezers to take a leaf and put it in a vacuum-sealed container. Done! Now you can transport your sample to the laboratory and reveal its secrets. The Gimpy Gimpy is one of the 6 species of stinging trees native to Australia. It grows in the sun, surrounded by other plants. And, most surprisingly, there are holes in its leaves. But before we find out what creatures feed on one of the most dangerous plants in the world, let's study its poison. The bush is covered with tiny hairs, and even one of these hairs can cause big problems. It's so thin and small that it can penetrate your skin and stay there for several months or even years. Water doesn't wash it out. It only enhances the effect of the poison. A tip of the hair opens up when it comes into contact with some surface. Then it injects a potent toxin. After that, you feel a burning sensation. Half an hour later, the feeling gets worse. Your skin starts pulsating and turns red. You never know how long the effect is going to last. It all depends on the number of hairs you've come into contact with. But what precisely is this toxin? How can it cause so many problems? Scientists still don't know for sure. They can't say which components of the poison cause the burning. The effect of the toxin lasts for a long time. High or cold temperatures don't stop it. After a few years, you can put pressure on the affected spot and feel that the poisonous hairs are still there. Pluck one leaf and throw it on the ground. Then come back 100 years later and touch this leaf. You'll feel the unpleasant sting again. The botanical samples of the Gimpy Gimpy still remain dangerous in many laboratories. With such toxic leaves, Gimpy Gimpy may be the most protected plant in the world. But some creatures still feed on its poisonous leaves. And one of these creatures is a species of ordinary nocturnal beetles. They can eat Gimpy Gimpy nonstop, and they don't care about its poisonous hairs at all. The toxin just doesn't affect these insects. This is the perfect meal for them, because no animal will dare to attack the bugs sitting on the Gimpy Gimpy, except for the red-legged patamelon, who lives in the forests of Australia. It looks like a mini kangaroo. This cute animal also feeds on the poisonous plant, and no one knows how the patamelon protects itself from the toxins. But unlike these fearless creatures, People have to install warning signs around these dangerous territories and wear special clothing and masks not to get harmed by the plant. And those who have come close to the Gimpy Gimpy have to wash their clothes right afterward. Poisonous hairs are likely to remain on their pants and jackets. So you've seen one of the most poisonous plants in the world. But what about the most poisonous tree? We leave Australia and move to Florida. Imagine you're somewhere in a tropical forest near the Caribbean coast. It starts raining, and you decide to hide under a tree. Of course, this is already a bad idea, since lightning can strike the tree. But you should worry about something different this time. The tree seems ordinary. A gray trunk, green leaves, and fruits similar to small apples. You stand next to it for a few seconds and feel your skin starting to burn. It feels as if drops of acid are falling from the sky. But no, it's still rainwater. But when a drop touches the surface of the tree, it gets filled with poison. Next, it bounces off the trunk, hits your skin, and causes the burning sensation. Never stand near a manchineel tree, and don't pluck its leaves and fruit either. The trunk, bark, branches, and fruit contain toxic juice. Even if the weather is warm and sunny, don't come close. The tree bark secretes toxins too. You may notice there's almost nothing growing around the tree. Mushrooms, shrubs, flowers, and other trees can't exist nearby. Animals also avoid this place. The poison produced by the manchineel tree is resistant to water and fire. That's why burning tree branches is also a bad idea. The smoke is very dangerous, especially for your eyes. Locals know this tree well, but tourists can easily get hurt. That's why people mark manchineel trees with paint as a warning. The Gimpy Gimpy and manchineel trees are scary plants, but the giant hogweed can be considered the king among toxic plants. Yeah, touching it can cause a severe allergic reaction, burning sensations, and whatnot. But the worst thing is that the giant hogweed is one of the fastest growing weeds in the world. Its seeds don't need long to develop and take over any territory. It quickly became one of the main invasive plant species in the world. The hogweed can affect entire ecosystems. The plant grows faster than others, displacing its competitors from their territories by harming them with poison. People spend a lot of money to fight this parasitic plant. If its seeds get into your garden, they'll occupy it in no time, and it'll be pretty challenging to get rid of them. These huge plants were initially considered exotic. People used to buy and grow them to decorate their gardens. But then, hogweed seeds managed to escape, and a real invasion began. The plant can spray its seeds over a vast area when you cut it, and the wind can carry them even further away to neighboring territories. Scientists still haven't come up with an easy and cheap way to deal with this weed.